Hiya, my name's Izzy or Isabelle PANAY and I'm a publicity assistant at Watkins Publishing. Can I say assistants?
Hello and welcome back to my channel. In this week's interview we have the lovely Izzy, who is a publicity assistant at Watkins Publishing. Hope you find it useful and enjoy.
So, not to sound horrendously cliche, but my job as a publicity assistant does look different every single day. I know that's what everyone says, but it's just so true. I think the only consistent that seems to be in every job is a lot of emails. However, I would say that kind of my consistent responsibilities are, writing press releases for books, building lists of journalists that we want to pitch it out to, then sending those pitches, following up, sending out advanced reader copies, submitting to awards, festivals, publishers weekly, basically just trying to get the word out as much as possible about our titles. I previously, after graduating, worked at a travel and lifestyle PR agency for over a year. It was a fantastic experience and I think it's where I found, my love for publicity. But I love the day-to-day, I loved the people I worked with, but I just found I was lacking that love for the end product. Some of my colleagues had their hearts set on seeing the world, were so passionate about the areas we were promoting. Meanwhile, I would be very happy just sat at home with a good book rather than traveling. So I decided to make the move into publishing, which I'm sure, as any hopefuls watching this will know, is not the easiest. So while I was applying for jobs, I was also trying to, kind of get involved in any experience I could, which ended up with me doing some editorial experience with Smash Bear Publishing House. And I did some social media stuff for the Comedy Women in Print Prize, just kind of trying to get to grips with the industry really. And then I accepted my now current job in late November last year and started this January. I think the most obvious skill needed to be a publicity assistant is you have to be a bit of a people person. Not necessarily to the point where you don't have to be hugely extroverted. I think it's actually quite common in the publishing industry that people are slightly more introverted. You need to be able to build connections with people. You need to be happy to chat and network, because that's such an important part of it, is, knowing like, oh, I want to pitch this. Do I have anyone I know who would cover it? Oh yes, I worked with this journalist. I would say that a less obvious skill that could be useful as a publicity assistant is organisation. That might kind of sound obvious to some people, because I know a lot of publishing roles ask for it, particularly in production, but it's actually interesting that I didn't really see it that often when I was applying for publicity roles. But I truly think it's so useful to have, because frequently you'll be working on a number of books coming up at similar times. So I find that high levels of organisation, I sound like I'm in an interview, high levels of organisation genuinely does make it much easier to keep track of the number of books, the number of projects, etc. I would say that a large amount of my role is actually quite based around meetings. The kind of meetings that I have in my role, again, here I go, they're varied. It kind of changes week to week, as with most things. But yeah, I think the majority are kind of internal. So within the marketing and publicity team, just to keep up to date with what the whole team is doing, which is really helpful, particularly when working from home. But we also meet with, journalists, authors. Then actually, I think one of the biggest benefits of being at a smaller publishing house is that I can kind of attend most meetings. I mean, obviously the senior team have their meetings that I probably won't be hopping on anytime soon, but any kind of, production design meetings, even if it's not necessarily a requirement that I join, they always say that I can come and sit in and listen, which is a great way to find out more about what's going on throughout the rest of the company. I think the biggest thing I've learned about the publishing industry, which you hear about, but I think it's impossible to kind of wrap your head around until you actually see it happening, is just how vast and varied it is. Like, obviously, when you're a publishing hopeful doing research, I kind of heard about all the different areas, rights, sales, marketing, publicity, editorial, audio, blah, blah, blah. But you don't really clock how broad it is, because I think people hear publishing and they think, oh, it's just, people make the book, people sell the book, the end. And there's so many steps and so many people that make that happen. And I'm still wrapping my head around it. I mean, the number of times I've had rights explained to me, I still don't quite get it. Like, in principle, I know what it is, but if I was in charge of rights for a day, I don't know what would happen. So yeah, I think the biggest thing I've learned is just the sheer variety of the industry. It's huge, which is wonderful, because I think everyone can truly find an area that they are genuinely passionate about, and it's so fascinating to hear. But yeah, don't leave me in charge of production anytime soon. So my biggest piece of advice for anyone trying to get a role similar to mine is that any and all experience is good, okay? I think obviously I'm a bit biased, as I kind of started in PR and then moved into publishing. And I do see the appeal, obviously, you know, if I had gone into publishing first, I'd probably be a bit higher up now. However, coming into publishing, having knowledge of PR, etc., has definitely made me so much better equipped for this role. So I would honestly say, take any experience. Everything contributes. People think, oh, unless I can get experience within a publishing house, that won't be relevant, they won't care. Not true. Honestly, you can have transferable skills in anything, and it's so valuable to companies to have kind of evidence, you know, that you can do a job well and you can be relied on. I've seen it before saying like, oh, I've only worked in customer service, that's not relevant. But it is so relevant, because I mean, this is the case in every industry, I'm sure, but there will always be difficult people or disagreements that occur, and having that experience of, you know, dealing with that, and you know how to remain professional in those scenarios, is so valuable. So yes, I would say 100%, if you are in a position to take on any kind of experience or learn alongside uni, I would 100% recommend it. The one book I think everyone should read is The Count of Monte Cristo. It's not a quick read. It's, I think, 1,200 pages long. It's definitely the longest book I've ever read, but I think the length is part of why it's such a good read. You know, I don't know if it's just me, but to me this is an achievement. Like, that many pages, I'm proud of myself. But I also think it really converted me back to classics. You know, after studying literature at school and stuff, I think, you know, as a teenager, you're like, oh, it feels a bit lengthy, it's boring, like, why is it so wordy, blah, blah. So for ages, I actively avoided classics. I was like, no, I just want to read contemporary fiction. But this book fully converted me back, because it's long, but every page has something good. Like, the story is incredible. It's not lengthy for the sake of being lengthy. And yeah, I would just highly recommend it to everyone. I'm aware my copy might distress people, because that's a lot of cracks in the spine. But I'm sorry, how can you read a book this size and not crack it? Maybe it's just me, I don't know.
Hope you found that useful, and remember, every Wednesday I post a new video with an industry professional.